Over the past week, Indian news channels have been abuzz with debates over Aurangzeb.
The protests over demands to demolish Aurangzeb's tombs turned violent as tension triggered in Nagpur's Ganesh Pit.
Aurangzeb was a ruthless, brutal and missionary bigot.
Is Aurangzeb relevant today?
His brutal reign, forced conversions, temple demolitions, and his dream of turning India into an Islamic caliphate. This discourse actually gained momentum following the release of the movie Chhaava and the recent riots in Nagpur. Amidst these discussions, RSS General Secretary Dattatreya Hosapale raised an important question. Why do our history textbooks largely ignore Dara Shikoh, the Mughal prince who stood for pluralism and unity? He also pointed out that while Aurangzeb is widely known, the contributions of figures like Dara Shikoh, who sought harmony between religions, are often sidelined in mainstream narratives. Dara Shikoh, the eldest son of Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan, was a visionary prince who sought to unite the diverse religious traditions of India. Unlike his more orthodox and conservative brother Aurangzeb, Dara was a scholar, he was a philosopher, and he was a patron of the arts. His defeat in the Mughal War of Succession and subsequent execution changed the course of Indian history. Born in 1615, Dara Shikoh was raised in an environment of grandeur and learning. Dara was raised among Brahmins, yogis, and sannyasis. From a young age, he was deeply inclined towards philosophy and mysticism. Unlike the other Mughal princes, who were trained primarily in military affairs, Dara immersed himself in Sufism and Vedantic thought. His close interaction with Hindu scholars, Sufi saints, and Persian intellectuals actually shaped his worldview. He represented a dramatically different vision for India's future than the one ultimately realized under Aurangzeb's rule. When Shah Jahan fell seriously ill in 1657, he explicitly ordered that Dara succeed him as the Emperor of Delhi, instructing all the state officials to recognize his authority. Unlike his brothers who were primarily trained in military affairs, Dara was raised quite differently. Dara's intellectual pursuits weren't just merely academic exercise, but they represented a profound vision for cultural and religious harmony in the subcontinent. His most significant contribution was the book Majma Ul-Bahrain, The Mingling of the Two Oceans, which meticulously highlighted the harmonious unity between Sufi philosophy in Islam and Vedanta philosophy in Hinduism. This work wasn't just simply comparative religious studies, it represented Dara's conviction at their mystical cores that Islam and Hinduism shared fundamental truths. Now, many people may disagree with this and say that this may not be the case, but however, this was his worldview. Perhaps even more revolutionary was Dara's approach to the Upanishads. He concluded that the hidden book mentioned in the Quran was none other than the Upanishads, and believed that to truly understand Quran, one needed to study Hindu texts. With the help of Sanskrit Pandits, he undertook the monumental task of translating 52 volumes of Sanskrit to Persian, compiling them in a work called Sir-e-Akbar, the greatest secret. This unprecedented cross-cultural scholarly project represented the potential for genuine religious dialogue rather than forced conversion, which was what Aurangzeb actually followed. The struggle for power that erupted in 1657 to 1658 represented more than a dynastic dispute. It was fundamentally a clash between two different visions for Mughal India. When Shah Jahan actually fell ill, a brutal war of succession erupted among his four sons, Dara Shikoh, Aurangzeb, Shuja and Murad. Though Shah Jahan had designated Dara as his successor, Mughal tradition allowed any prince to stake a claim to the throne. Unlike European monarchies where primogeniture was the norm, Mughal succession was often decided through military contests between rival princes, which meant that they would always be at war with each other to stake a claim to the throne. Aurangzeb was known for his military prowess and strategic thinking. He formed alliances with his other brothers and they united to defeat Dara in a series of battles. The decisive Battle of Samugad in 1658 ended Dara's hopes for the throne. After he was captured, Aurangzeb ordered his execution on the charges of apostasy, which meant that he did not follow Islam. The clerics around Aurangzeb also alleged that Dara had abandoned Islam, a direct response to his inclusive religious views and his attempts to bridge the Hindu-Muslim theological divisions. Many historians continue to debate how the Indian subcontinent might have developed had Dara Shikoh defeated Aurangzeb in the succession war. Dara's vision directly contrasted with Aurangzeb's orthodox policies, where Aurangzeb would later impose the jizya tax on non-Muslims and order the destruction of temples. Dara actually sought understanding between the two faiths. His execution not just represented the death of a prince, but the elimination of a potential path towards religious harmony in the subcontinent for the next 500 years to come. To understand the significance of what was lost with Dara's defeat, we must examine what followed under Aurangzeb's rule. His 49-year reign was characterized by religious orthodoxy, military expansionism, and policies that created deep divisions within India's society. The Islamic court historian Muhammad Saki Mustaid Khan documented in Masir-e-Alamgiri in 1731 that Aurangzeb issued decrees ordering the demolition of numerous Hindu temples. Among the significant religious sites that were destroyed by Aurangzeb were the Kashi Vishwanath temple in Varanasi, which was destroyed in 1669. In the following year, the Kesavarai temple in Mathura was destroyed in 1670, and the Somnath temple was continuously attacked. So these were also replaced by many Idgas. And these weren't just isolated incidents, but a part of the systemic policy of religious conversion and suppression. Beyond temple destruction, Aurangzeb executed the 9th Sikh Guru Tegh Bahadur and Maratha leader Sambhaji Maharaj for refusing to embrace Islam. He imprisoned his own father Shah Jahan and eliminated his brothers, showing a ruthlessness that contrasted sharply with Dara's philosophical treatment. The recent comments made by RSS General Secretary Dattaji questioning Dara Shikoh's absence from history textbooks actually highlights a very important issue that is relevant. In an India grappling with questions of religious coexistence and national identity, Dara represents an indigenous model of secularism rooted in spiritual understanding rather than mere political accommodation. Dara's approach was quite unique. He did not merely tolerate other religions, but he actually actively engaged with them, trying to understand their philosophical foundation. His work that compared Islamic mysticism and Hindu Vedanta revealed that at the core of his beliefs was this mysticism, and these traditions approached the same universal truths but through different paths. This perspective, had it been institutionalized through imperial policy, might have fostered a different relationship between India's religious communities. Whether it would have worked out in the long run or not is a question one needs to ask, but regardless, it would have been significantly better and stranger compared to Aurangzeb. What made Dara's approach revolutionary was his mystical perspective. As a Sufi, he had a deep interest in and appreciation for mystical ideas, and based on his knowledge and spiritual experiences, he argued throughout in his scholarly works for a certain parity or transparency between Islam and Hinduism in the realm of essence. While acknowledging the differences that these two religions had, he focused on what he saw as a shared monotheistic foundations, arguing that both religions actually upheld the concept of Tawhid, which meant that Tawhid is an Islamic doctrine of the oneness of God. Dara actually studied both Islamic and Hindu tradition deeply, focusing on comparative analysis on their core texts, the Quran and the Upanishads. Though this approach was more mystical rather than historical or textual, his emphasis on commonalities over differences represented that Islam could have taken a different path in the subcontinent and could have fostered mutual understanding, especially with the Hindus who felt threatened at that time. He even drew parallels between the two religions, equating Adam with Brahma, a perspective later that contributed to his condemnation as a heretic. So, what if Dara Shikoh lived and ruled? The history of the Indian subcontinent might have been completely different. Perhaps religious coexistence could have been institutionalized, and the schisms that later defined South Asian history might have been avoided or at least mitigated. His vision represented not just the erasure of religious differences, but their transcendence through a deeper understanding. Today, as India continues to navigate the complexities of its multi-religious identity, Dara Shikoh's legacy offers valuable insights. His inclusion in our historical narratives isn't just about correcting an oversight, but also recognizing an alternative vision for religious coexistence that may have emerged within India's Mughal heritage. While Aurangzeb's orthodoxy might serve certain contemporary political narratives, Dara's inclusive vision challenges us to consider paths not taken and possibilities that are still open to us. The question that was raised by Dattaji deserves serious consideration. Why has this figure, who represented a genuine attempt at Hindu-Muslim synthesis, been so thoroughly marginalized in our historical education? Perhaps recovering Dara Shikoh's legacy is not just about historical accuracy, but about reclaiming intellectual resources for building a more harmonious future.